Hey everyone, today we dive into the most haunting mystery in aviation history. The story of Malaysia Airlines Flight 370, where 239 souls simply vanished into thin air, leaving behind a puzzle that has consumed investigators, families, and the world for over a decade. What really happened on that March night in 2014? The incredible story we're about to uncover will challenge everything you thought you knew about modern aviation safety and reveal a mystery so complex that it continues to baffle experts more than 11 years later. So before we dive in, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you enjoy what I do here, and let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now get comfortable, grab something to drink, and let's experience this incredible story together. Picture this scene. It's just past midnight on March 8, 2014, at Kuala Lumpur International Airport. The terminal hums with the quiet energy of late-night departures, fluorescent lights casting long shadows across nearly empty corridors. Flight MH370, a massive Boeing 777-200ER, registered as 9MMRO, sits at Gate C1 like a sleeping giant, its twin Rolls-Royce engines waiting to carry 239 people on what should have been a routine 6-hour journey to Beijing. The aircraft itself tells a story of reliability, having first taken flight in 2002 and accumulating over 53,000 flight hours without any significant incidents. Among the passengers boarding that night are families returning home to China after vacations in Malaysia, business travelers heading to important meetings, artists and engineers, and tourists carrying memories of their Malaysian adventures. 2-year-old Wang Moheng travels with his parents, while 77-year-old Liu Rusheng makes his way slowly up the jet bridge. None of them could imagine they were about to become part of aviation's greatest mystery. Captain Zahari Ahmad Shah, a veteran pilot with over 18,000 flight hours, conducts his pre-flight checks with the methodical precision that had defined his 33-year career with Malaysia Airlines. Born on the island of Penang, the 53-year-old captain had grown up dreaming of flight, eventually joining Malaysia Airlines as a cadet pilot in 1981 under government sponsorship. His colleagues describe him as passionate about aviation, someone who built an elaborate flight simulator in his home and spent his free time practicing emergency procedures and exploring virtual flights to destinations around the world. He was known for his calm demeanor, his technical expertise, and his willingness to mentor younger pilots. On social media, he shared his love of flying with posts about aircraft and aviation technology. Those who knew him saw no signs of the darkness that conspiracy theories would later attribute to him. Beside him sits First Officer Farik Abdul Hamid, just 27 years old, with the enthusiasm of someone still early in what promised to be a brilliant aviation career. Farik had joined Malaysia Airlines in 2007 and was considered a competent pilot, though he was still transitioning to the Boeing 777 after flying smaller aircraft. This was actually one of his final training flights on the 777 before being certified to fly the aircraft independently. Friends and family described him as dedicated, professional, and excited about his future in aviation. He had recently become engaged and was looking forward to building a life with his fiancée. Together, Zahari and Farik represented decades of combined experience and thousands of safe flights. Nothing in their backgrounds, their recent behavior, or their psychological profiles suggested what was about to unfold. As passengers settle into their seats, each carries their own story. Yan, a 31-year-old engineer, was returning to Beijing after a business trip, texting her husband one final goodnight message before takeoff. The Chong family from Kuala Lumpur were traveling to Beijing for a vacation they had planned for months. Art curator Bian Liang Jing was heading home after organizing an exhibition in Malaysia. Each passenger represented a life, dreams, and people who loved them waiting back home. In the cargo hold, their luggage contained souvenirs, business documents, gifts for family members, and all the mundane items that make up human existence. The cabin crew, led by Chief Flight Attendant Go Sok Lei, completed their safety demonstrations and secured the cabin for departure. These 12 crew members were experienced professionals who had handled countless flights, dealing with everything from medical emergencies to difficult passengers with calm efficiency. They had no way of knowing they were about to face a situation that no training could have prepared them for. At exactly 12:41 a.m. local time, MH370 pushes back from the gate and begins its taxi to runway 32. And the Kuala Lumpur control tower clears them for takeoff, and Captain Zahari advances the throttles, sending the massive aircraft accelerating down the runway. At 12:42 a.m., the Boeing 777 lifts off into the dark Malaysian night, its navigation lights blinking as it climbs steadily toward its initial cruising altitude of 35,000 feet. The aircraft follows its filed flight plan, turning northeast over the South China Sea toward waypoint Igari, where it would transition from Malaysian to Vietnamese airspace. For the first 38 minutes, everything proceeds exactly as it should. The plane follows its planned route with mechanical precision, the autopilot guiding it along invisible highways in the sky. Captain Zahari and First Officer Farik communicate normally with air traffic control, acknowledging altitude changes and navigation instructions, with the routine professionalism that marks thousands of similar flights every day. The passengers settle in for what should be an uneventful overnight flight, some trying to sleep, others reading or watching the in-flight entertainment system. The cabin crew prepares for meal service, following procedures they had performed countless times before. But here's where our story takes its first chilling turn. At 1:07 a.m., the Aircraft Communication Addressing and Reporting System, known as ACARS, sends its final automated data transmission. This system, invisible to passengers but crucial for maintenance and operations, regularly reports the aircraft's status to Malaysia Airlines ground operations. The fact that this was the last ACARS transmission would only become significant much later, when investigators realized that someone had deliberately disabled the system. At 1:19 a.m., as the aircraft approaches waypoint Igari and the handover point between Malaysian and Vietnamese airspace, and Captain Zahari's voice comes through the radio one final time, delivering what would become some of the most analyzed words in aviation history. "Good night, Malaysia 370, he says, his voice calm and professional, betraying nothing unusual. The tone is routine, exactly what air traffic controllers expect to hear during a normal handover. These 5 simple words would be the last anyone would ever hear from Flight MH370, analyzed by voice experts, debated by investigators, and haunting the families of those aboard. What happens next defies everything we know about modern aviation. Just 2 minutes after that final transmission, at 1:21 a.m., something extraordinary occurs. The aircraft's transponder, the device that broadcasts the plane's identity, altitude, speed, and location to air traffic control, suddenly goes silent. In an instant, MH370 vanishes from civilian radar screens as if it simply ceased to exist. But this is no technical malfunction, because what investigators would later discover reveals something far more sinister and deliberate. Unknown to the outside world at the time, Malaysian military radar continues tracking an unidentified aircraft, making a dramatic westward turn, completely abandoning its planned route to Beijing. This ghost plane, invisible to civilian controllers but still detectable by military systems, begins flying back across the Malay Peninsula in the opposite direction. The radar track shows the aircraft turning southwest, then northwest, following a path that would take it over some of Malaysia's most sensitive military installations and airspace. For the next hour, military radar tracks this mystery aircraft as it flies a zigzag pattern across Malaysia, passing over the island of Penang, Captain Zahari's hometown. Aviation experts would later speculate about the significance of this route, with some suggesting that whoever was controlling the aircraft deliberately chose to fly over Penang, perhaps as a final farewell or gesture. The aircraft then continues northwest over the Strait of Malacca, before heading out over the Andaman Sea, where it disappears from even military radar at approximately 2:22 a.m., nearly 2 hours after its last normal communication. Now, to understand the full scope of what's happening, we need to realize that at this exact moment, 239 people have effectively vanished from the face of the earth. Their families in Beijing wait at Capital International Airport for an arrival that will never come. As hours pass and the flight fails to appear on arrival boards, confusion turns to concern, then to panic. Chinese authorities begin making inquiries, and Malaysia Airlines realizes they have lost contact with one of their aircraft somewhere over the South China Sea. Malaysian authorities scramble to understand how a massive commercial aircraft could simply disappear in an age of satellite tracking and constant communication. The initial assumption is mechanical failure or catastrophic accident, leading to an immediate search operation in the South China Sea near the aircraft's last known position. Ships and aircraft from multiple countries converge on the area, searching for debris, oil slicks, or any sign of what happened to MH370. But they're looking in completely the wrong place, chasing shadows while the real story unfolds hundreds of miles away. The story takes an even stranger turn when investigators uncover a crucial piece of evidence that changes everything. Hours after the plane disappeared, engineers at Inmarsat, a British satellite communications company, make a discovery that would revolutionize the investigation. Their satellite had been automatically exchanging electronic handshakes with MH370 throughout its flight, creating a digital breadcrumb trail that investigators could follow. These satellite data transmissions, never intended for tracking aircraft, suddenly become the only clues to solving the greatest mystery in aviation history. What these satellite communications reveal is absolutely staggering. The aircraft didn't crash in the South China Sea, as everyone initially believed. Instead, it had flown for hours in a completely different direction, eventually ending up somewhere in the vast expanse of the southern Indian Ocean, one of the most remote and inhospitable places on Earth. The final satellite handshake occurred at 8:19 a.m., more than 7 hours after takeoff and nearly 6 hours after the aircraft vanished from radar. The implications are mind-bending. Someone, somehow, had deliberately diverted this aircraft and flown it for hours into the emptiness of the ocean, carrying 239 people to an unknown fate. But here's where things get really interesting. As investigators dig deeper into the mystery, they uncover details that make this story even more puzzling. The aircraft's sophisticated communication systems didn't all fail at once in some catastrophic event. Instead, they were disabled in a specific sequence that suggests someone with intimate knowledge of the Boeing 777 systems was systematically cutting off the plane's ability to communicate with the outside world. First, the transponder stopped broadcasting at 1:21 a.m., and the ACARS system had been disabled sometime between 1:07 and 1:37 a.m., each switched off at different times in what appears to be a deliberate pattern designed to make the aircraft invisible to tracking systems. This realization fundamentally changes the nature of the investigation. What initially appeared to be an accident or mechanical failure now looks like a deliberate act, possibly involving someone with detailed knowledge of aviation systems and procedures. The question becomes not what went wrong with the aircraft, but who took control of it and why. The methodical disabling of communication systems suggests planning and expertise, ruling out spontaneous hijacking or sudden mechanical failure. The search that follows becomes the most expensive and extensive in aviation history. Ships and aircraft from more than a dozen countries scour vast areas of ocean, following the mathematical calculations derived from those satellite pings. The Australian Transport Safety Bureau takes charge of the underwater search, coordinating an unprecedented international effort involving naval vessels, research ships, and cutting-edge underwater technology. Autonomous underwater vehicles probe the deepest parts of the Indian Ocean, mapping previously unknown sections of the sea floor in their quest to find MH370. The search area itself presents enormous challenges. The southern Indian Ocean is one of the most remote and hostile environments on Earth, with depths reaching over 6,000 meters, powerful currents, extreme weather, and virtually no nearby land. The search teams face mountainous underwater terrain, equipment failures in the harsh conditions, and the sheer enormity of trying to find aircraft debris scattered across thousands of square kilometers of ocean floor. For months, then years, the search continues with no trace of the aircraft or the 239 people aboard, consuming hundreds of millions of dollars and testing the limits of maritime search technology. Then, 17 months after the disappearance, something remarkable happens. Yawnipedia, a beach cleaner on the French island of Réunion in the western Indian Ocean, is walking along the shore when he spots something unusual washed up among the rocks. The barnacle-encrusted piece of debris is clearly from an aircraft, approximately 6 feet long and curved like a wing section. Local authorities secure the fragment and send it to France for analysis, where experts quickly identify it as a flaperon from a Boeing 777. Serial numbers etched into the metal confirm what everyone hoped and feared: it came from MH370. Finally, after 17 months of speculation and theory, here was physical proof that the aircraft had indeed crashed in the Indian Ocean. The discovery validates the satellite analysis and confirms that investigators have been searching in the right general area. But the flaperon also raises new questions about the aircraft's final moments and the forces that scattered debris across thousands of miles of ocean. More debris would follow over the coming years, each piece telling part of the story while deepening the mystery. A horizontal stabilizer fragment appears on the coast of Mozambique, Wing flaps wash up in Tanzania. Engine cowling pieces are found in South Africa. Each discovery is photographed, cataloged, and analyzed for clues about how the aircraft broke apart and where it might have crashed. The pattern of debris, carried by the complex current systems of the Indian Ocean, helps narrow the search area, but the main wreckage, containing the answers everyone desperately seeks, remains hidden beneath miles of dark water. The debris tells a story of high-impact destruction. The twisted metal and shattered composite materials suggest the aircraft hit the water at high speed, breaking apart on impact rather than attempting a controlled ditching. Damage patterns on some pieces indicate the aircraft may have been in a steep, high-speed descent when it crashed, though investigators caution that ocean currents and marine life can alter debris after the fact. What makes this mystery even more compelling is the discovery investigators made when they searched Captain Zahari's home in Shah Alam, outside Kuala Lumpur. Among his possessions was an elaborate flight simulator setup, built using Microsoft Flight Simulator X software and professional-grade controls. Many pilots maintain similar home simulators for practice and entertainment, so initially this seemed unremarkable. But when FBI forensic experts examined the hard drives from the simulator, they found something chilling. Data recovered from deleted files showed that on February 2, 2014, just 6 weeks before MH370's disappearance, someone had used the simulator to practice a flight route that was eerily similar to the path investigators believed the real aircraft took. The simulated flight began at Kuala Lumpur International Airport, proceeded north initially as if heading toward Beijing, then made a sharp turn and flew northwest up the Strait of Malacca, past the tip of Sumatra, turned south into the Indian Ocean, and ended with fuel exhaustion over the remote southern Indian Ocean, almost exactly matching the suspected route of MH370. The simulation included specific details that made it even more disturbing. The virtual pilot had practiced flying at various altitudes, including some that would be unusual for normal commercial flight. The flight path showed deliberate navigation around known radar coverage areas, suggesting knowledge of air traffic control systems and military radar capabilities. Most chilling of all, the simulated aircraft ran out of fuel in almost the exact area where investigators believe MH370 crashed. This discovery adds another layer to an already complex puzzle. Was this evidence of premeditation, suggesting Captain Zahari had planned the aircraft's disappearance weeks in advance? The timing seems too coincidental to ignore, especially given the sophisticated knowledge required to disable the aircraft's communication systems and navigate such a complex route. But investigators also note that among the hundreds of flights saved on Zahari's simulator, this was just one of many scenarios he had practiced, including emergency procedures, unusual airports, and challenging weather conditions. Zahari's family and colleagues vehemently reject any suggestion that he was responsible for the aircraft's disappearance. They describe a man passionate about flying, devoted to his family, and respected by his peers. His sister tells reporters that he loved life and flying too much to ever consider such an act. His colleagues remember him as a mentor to younger pilots, someone who took safety seriously and followed procedures meticulously. The psychological profile compiled by investigators found no evidence of depression, extremism, or personal problems that might motivate such a drastic action. Yet the simulator evidence remains troubling, especially when combined with other circumstantial factors. Reports emerged that Zahari's wife and children had moved out of the family home the day before the flight, though his family denies any marital problems. Investigators look into his political views, noting his support for opposition politician Anwar Ibrahim, who was sentenced to prison the day before MH370's disappearance. Some theorize this might have provided political motivation, though no evidence supports such speculation. The investigation also scrutinizes First Officer Farik Abdul Hamid, though he appears even less likely to be involved in any deliberate action. Young, engaged, and looking forward to his future in aviation, Farik had no apparent motive for such an act. His family describes him as happy and excited about his career, with no signs of personal or professional problems that might lead to such desperation. The human impact of this mystery cannot be overstated. For the families of the 239 people aboard MH370, the lack of answers represents an ongoing torment, unlike any other aviation disaster. Without wreckage, without bodies, without understanding what happened in those final hours, they live in a state of perpetual uncertainty that psychologists call ambiguous loss. They cannot properly grieve because they don't know for certain that their loved ones are dead, yet they cannot hope for reunion because the evidence suggests no survivors. Chinese families, who made up the majority of the passengers, have organized persistent campaigns demanding answers from Malaysian authorities. They traveled to Kuala Lumpur for meetings with officials, hold vigils on the anniversary of the disappearance, and maintain pressure on their own government to continue pushing for investigations. Their grief is compounded by frustration at what they see as inadequate investigation, poor communication from officials, and a general sense that their loved ones have been forgotten by the world. Grace Nathan, whose mother Ann Daisy was a passenger on MH370, becomes one of the most vocal advocates for continued searching. A lawyer herself, she works tirelessly to keep the case in public attention, organizing memorial events, meeting with officials, and supporting other families in their quest for answers. Her story represents the thousands of family members whose lives were forever changed by the disappearance, people who cannot move forward without knowing what happened to their loved ones. The Malaysian government's handling of the crisis becomes a source of additional pain for families. Initial communications are confused and contradictory, with officials providing information that later proves incorrect. The delay in acknowledging that the aircraft had turned back and flown for hours after disappearing frustrates international partners and devastates families who feel they were misled. Cultural differences in communication styles and the complexity of the international investigation create additional barriers to understanding. As years pass without resolution, theories about what happened to MH370 multiply and evolve, each offering a different explanation for the disappearance. The pilot's suicide theory suggests Captain Zahari deliberately crashed the aircraft, perhaps in response to personal or political problems. Proponents point to the simulator evidence, the sophisticated route planning, and the deliberate disabling of communication systems as evidence of premeditation. The hijacking theory proposes that unknown individuals took control of the aircraft, possibly to steal it for later use in a terrorist attack. This theory struggles to explain why hijackers would fly the aircraft into the remote Indian Ocean rather than toward a target or safe haven. The mechanical failure theory suggests a catastrophic event that disabled communications while leaving the aircraft flyable, though experts note that such a specific type of failure has never been documented. More exotic theories emerge from the fringes of internet speculation. Some propose cyber warfare scenarios where hackers took control of the aircraft's systems, though aviation cybersecurity experts note that flight control systems are typically isolated from external networks. Others suggest military intervention, proposing that the aircraft was shot down by mistake and covered up by governments. A few even propose that the aircraft was stolen and landed secretly at a remote airstrip, though the debris evidence contradicts this possibility. Each theory has its proponents and its flaws, supported by some evidence while contradicted by other facts. The lack of definitive answers creates space for speculation and conspiracy theories, some more plausible than others. Investigators continue to evaluate new ideas while focusing on the most likely scenarios based on available evidence. The investigation has revealed troubling gaps in aviation security and tracking that the disappearance of MH370 exposed. In an age where we can track a smartphone anywhere on Earth, how did a massive commercial aircraft simply vanish? The answer reveals the limitations of aviation tracking systems that were designed for normal operations rather than deliberate evasion. Commercial aircraft depend on transponders to identify themselves to air traffic control, but these devices can be switched off from the cockpit. Military radar can track aircraft without transponder signals, but coverage is limited and not continuously monitored in peacetime. Satellite communications exist, but were not designed for tracking and provide only limited information about aircraft location. The disappearance of MH370 has led to new requirements for aircraft tracking and communication systems, implemented through the International Civil Aviation Organization. Airlines must now track their aircraft at least every 15 minutes, with reduced intervals if communications are lost. New satellite tracking systems provide global coverage, and distress beacons that cannot be disabled from the cockpit are being developed. These improvements came too late for the 239 people who disappeared that March night, but they should prevent similar disappearances in the future. Recent developments have brought new hope to the search for answers, though hope has been raised and dashed multiple times over the past decade. In late 2024, the Malaysian government approved a new search operation led by Ocean Infinity, the same marine exploration company that conducted an unsuccessful search in 2018. Using advanced underwater robotics and refined data analysis, they plan to search a new 15,000 square kilometer area of the southern Indian Ocean, focusing on regions identified through improved debris drift analysis and satellite data interpretation. The contract operates on a no-find, no-fee basis, with Malaysia agreeing to pay $70 million only if significant wreckage is found. This approach reduces financial risk for the government, while incentivizing the search company to use their most advanced technology and techniques. Ocean Infinity has invested heavily in new underwater vehicles capable of operating at extreme depths for extended periods, providing better coverage and higher resolution mapping than previous searches. The renewed search began in February 2025 with the deployment of the vessel Armada 7806 and a fleet of autonomous underwater vehicles. These cutting-edge drones represent a significant improvement over previous search technology, capable of diving beyond 6,000 meters and remaining submerged for up to 100 hours while conducting detailed sonar mapping of the ocean floor. However, after just 6 weeks of operations, the search was suspended in April 2025 due to seasonal weather conditions in the southern Indian Ocean. The austral winter brings severe storms and dangerous seas that make search operations impossible, forcing Ocean Infinity to withdraw their vessels until conditions improve. They plan to resume operations later in 2025 when the weather allows, continuing their systematic search of the priority area. For the families of MH370's passengers and crew, this represents another cycle of hope and uncertainty in their decade-long quest for answers. Each new search brings the possibility of finally learning what happened to their loved ones, but also the risk of another disappointment if nothing is found. Grace Nathan and other family advocates continue to support the search efforts while managing their expectations based on previous disappointments. The technical challenges facing the search teams are enormous. The southern Indian Ocean features some of the most extreme underwater terrain on Earth, with underwater mountains, deep valleys, and complex geological formations that can hide aircraft debris. Strong currents have likely scattered wreckage over a wide area, while marine growth and sediment may have covered or altered debris over the past 11 years. But here's what makes this story so enduringly compelling beyond just the technical mystery. MH370 represents more than just a missing aircraft. It's a mirror reflecting our assumptions about the modern world and our place in it. We live in an age of constant connectivity, where satellites track our every movement, where digital footprints document our daily lives, where artificial intelligence can predict our behavior and smartphones know our location within meters. The idea that 239 people could simply vanish challenges our fundamental belief in technology's ability to keep us safe and accounted for. The mystery also reveals the limits of international cooperation in crisis situations. Despite unprecedented collaboration between dozens of countries, conflicting information, delayed responses, competing national interests, and simple human error hampered the initial search efforts. The story of MH370 is as much about human failings and institutional shortcomings as it is about aviation technology and unanswered questions. What really happened during those final hours remains one of the great unsolved mysteries of our time. Right up there with the disappearance of Amelia Earhart and the mystery of the Mary Celeste. Was it a deliberate act by someone in the cockpit, carried out with premeditation and planning? A hijacking that somehow went wrong, leaving the aircraft flying on autopilot until fuel exhaustion? A catastrophic technical failure that disabled communications while leaving the aircraft flyable for hours? A cyber attack that somehow took control of the plane's systems? Each possibility seems both plausible and impossible, supported by some evidence while contradicted by other facts. The investigation has produced a massive amount of data, analysis, and speculation, filling thousands of pages of official reports and generating countless hours of expert testimony. Yet the fundamental questions remain unanswered. Who was controlling the aircraft during those final hours of flight across the Indian Ocean? Why did they choose to fly into the most remote part of Earth's surface? What happened to the 239 people aboard during this ordeal? Were they conscious and aware of their situation, or had they been incapacitated early in the flight through depressurization or other means? New technologies continue to offer hope for solving the mystery, each promising to unlock secrets that have remained hidden for over a decade. Researchers are exploring innovative approaches like using historical radio signal data to retroactively track the aircraft's path, analyzing ocean current models with supercomputers to predict where debris might have originated, and employing artificial intelligence to process the vast amounts of data generated by the investigation and identify patterns that human analysts might have missed. The story has also spawned countless documentaries, books, podcasts, and investigations by amateur sleuths around the world. The democratization of information through the internet has created a global community of people dedicated to solving the mystery, sharing theories, and analyzing evidence with the passion and dedication of professional investigators. Some of their work has contributed genuinely valuable insights to the official investigation, while other efforts have promoted unfounded conspiracy theories that complicate the search for truth. For aviation safety experts, MH370 represents both a profound failure and an important opportunity for improvement. The failure lies in how easily an experienced pilot could deviate from the planned route and disable tracking systems without immediate detection. The opportunity comes from implementing new safety measures designed to prevent similar disappearances, including real-time tracking, enhanced communication systems, improved international coordination protocols, and better monitoring of crew psychological health. Yet even as aviation becomes safer and more monitored with each passing year, the mystery of MH370 serves as a stark reminder that human nature remains fundamentally unpredictable. No amount of technology can fully account for the complexity of human motivation and the possibility that someone with the right knowledge and access could circumvent even the most sophisticated safety systems. The story forces us to confront the uncomfortable reality that perfect security may be impossible when humans are involved in operating complex systems. The economic impact of the disappearance extends far beyond the immediate costs of the search operations, which have exceeded $200 million and represent the most expensive search in aviation history. Malaysia Airlines faced severe financial difficulties in the aftermath, with bookings dropping dramatically and the airline's reputation suffering worldwide. The carrier eventually required government intervention to survive, leading to a complete restructuring and rebranding effort that continues today. The broader aviation industry implemented costly new tracking requirements, upgraded communication systems, and developed new emergency procedures based on lessons learned from MH370. Insurance companies restructured their policies to account for the possibility of deliberate acts by crew members, while aircraft manufacturers invested in new security technologies designed to prevent unauthorized deviation from flight plans. As we approach the 11th anniversary of MH370's disappearance, the mystery continues to evolve and develop new dimensions. The new search technologies offer improved chances of finding the wreckage, while advances in data analysis provide fresh perspectives on existing evidence. The families of the 239 people aboard continue their fight for answers, refusing to let the world forget about their loved ones, and maintaining pressure on governments and aviation authorities to continue the search for truth. The story of MH370 ultimately forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about the world we live in and our place within it. Despite all our technological advances, despite our interconnected global systems, despite our confidence in modern aviation safety and international cooperation, 239 people could still simply vanish without a trace on a routine commercial flight. The mystery challenges our assumptions about control, safety, and the reliability of the systems we depend on every day to keep us connected and secure. What happened to Malaysia Airlines Flight 370? In more than a decade after its disappearance, we still don't know the complete answer. The aircraft and the 239 people aboard remain missing, hidden somewhere in the vast expanse of the southern Indian Ocean beneath miles of dark water. The investigation continues. The searches resume periodically with new technology and refined techniques, and new theories emerge regularly. But the fundamental mystery endures like a puzzle with missing pieces. Perhaps that's what makes this story so compelling and enduring. In an age of instant information and constant connectivity, where every moment of our lives is documented and tracked, MH370 reminds us that some mysteries resist easy solutions, and that the world still holds secrets that challenge our understanding and defy our attempts at explanation. The disappearance stands as one of the great unsolved puzzles of our time, a reminder that despite all our technological progress and sophisticated monitoring systems, the world can still surprise us in the most profound and disturbing ways. The families of those aboard MH370 continue to wait for answers, holding on to hope that someday, somehow, the truth will finally emerge from the depths of the Indian Ocean. Until that day comes, the mystery of Malaysia Airlines Flight 370 continues aviation's greatest enigma. A story that continues to capture imaginations, challenge investigators, and remind us of the fragility of life and the limits of human knowledge in an interconnected but still mysterious world.